What? Hope you're seeing a picture of Ezra Klein. Okay, so things are moving so fast. I was going to do a section on assassins, but then the Republican convention happened, and then Ezra did this updated a day after the GOP convention, which was 5 days ago or not. And I think I sent some of you people information that he was interested in the open convention as long ago as last February. And so I found that. And he's always said Biden is a great president. His administration would be good again, but he can't campaign. And he nailed it, right? And he said that we got to be ready for open convention. Then the moment of truth came after the GOP convention, where it looked likely that Biden was going to get out. And then he went around to everybody and say, so when Biden gets out, what are we going to do? And he had found that most of the politicians he'd been talking to since last February no longer had the appetite for an open convention. I've given the history of an open convention, which maybe at some point I'll turn to. But it took so long for Biden to step aside that the party was exhausted, and that it was deemed the time was too short for a mini primary, which Clyburn has been talking about relatively recently. Kamala Harris, long story short, Ezra's all in on Kamala Harris. And I'm going to spend the rest of most of the rest of this hour making a case on why Kamala Harris may be okay after. She's been extremely impressive since the debate debacle. She's been very good on the stump. No missteps. And this has been kind of a quiet audition for her coming in and as vice president, stepping into the role naturally. And she's showing everybody in the party that she's good enough. And okay, what does that mean? Good enough for what? First of all, the funds, the fundraising. It's the simplest for Harris to inherit. Wouldn't have been impossible with an open convention, but it's the simplest, and she can hit the ground running financially. Any other candidate would have to go through a lot of red tape. If for something happened to Harris, the DNC could donate the funds to a new candidate, but that would involve a lot of paperwork. And so he put out a special show today, a monologue, really. And he asked the question, are the Democrats right to unite around Kamala? And he answered himself, yes, unequivocally, yes. And Biden, he was looking at a daunting challenge, and now that challenge is Harris's. The calculation before Biden dropped out was that Trump only needed to win these 3 states, and he'd be president. Biden needed to win those 3 plus Minnesota, New Mexico, and Maine, and so these states are all of a sudden in contention. Gonna admit, Harold, and in fact, some of them are out of reach of Virginia, Arizona, Georgia, North Carolina. So the Democrats have a tall order to claw their way back into this race. And we got a lot of unity on the plus side. He's being a hero for doing what Donald Trump would never do, which is stand aside for the good of the country, putting his ambition second. That's what actually it means to put him first. That phrase. And so as of Sunday, she was ready to go, and had a press release first thing after midnight, and included all the people that were backing her, specifically Newsom, Shapiro, Whitmer, and the paperwork to transfer the $95 million in Biden's campaign had already been signed over. Shigeko.
Well, my newspaper said that Kamala Harris got 81 million. Is that in addition to the 91.5 million?
Yes, the money is just pouring really, really quickly. So I mean, we've seen that on the Republican side, but now it's coming in both to the campaign and to the DNC, both. And so, yeah, Harold.
I'm thinking that you're giving Biden too much credit for getting out of the race. It's kind of like what Winston Churchill used to say about America. They do the right thing when they've exhausted all the other possibilities.
Yeah, and the fact that it took so long has limited our choices at this late date. So I'm just talking about the rhetoric that we're hearing and will hear. But it took way too long, and the Democrats paid the price for lack of flexibility. Now I'm going to make the case that Ezra says that they're still going to be able to pull it off with Kamala, and then we can talk more about that later. But as of 10 p.m. Sunday, she had already picked up 531 delegates from Biden. And it's clear what her theme is going to be: the prosecutor versus the criminal. That's going to be the subtext. Harris takes over without missing a step on all the Biden campaign headquarters and the staff. And so these were all the tactical questions facing the Democratic Party Sunday. How are we going to manage all that, especially when we're all tired? And then there's been already a strategic leak going after Arizona, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and particularly, and favorite son vice president nominations. So she's already playing that card. And there's a good chance now that the convention will abide by Harris's choice. There was always going to be a double question. So, okay, you pick a lead candidate, and then there'll be a fight for vice president. But it's looking like she's going to be given the decision. And so the optimistic take, and I'll give the pessimistic in just a second. But remember, Trump has never won the popular vote, not even in 2016. And in 2018, in the midterms, the Democrats wrecked the Republicans. In 2020, Biden won. In 2022, with inflation roaring, they should have lost a lot more, but they won seats in the Senate, and they held their losses in the House in spite of inflation. And now what we have is the GOP has nominated the oldest candidate in the United States. Heather Cox points out that he repeatedly fell asleep at his own nominating convention, let alone his criminal trial. So the pessimism, still the polls, early polls, show that Trump leads Harris. The other downside is that a lot of people who voted for Biden and are coming to Chicago expecting to vote for Biden feel like democracies have been undercut, specifically a Nevada delegate. But she came around and endorsed Harris in short order. Harris is battling an image problem from the 2020 election. And the basic problem was her conflicted identity. Her favorite identity in California was as a prosecutor, which she took all the way to Attorney General of the state. And she was considered a moderate, smart on crime prosecutor. But the moment in 2020 after George Floyd, that wasn't the moment for a prosecutor. So she tried a different identity. She tried Obama's identity and went for highlighting her life story. She was aware that Sanders had success with Medicare for all. So she adopted it, but she hadn't thought it through. I remember that. She just couldn't answer basic questions. And then in that first debate with Biden, she was too tactical for her own good. She went after Biden on busing, even though she herself had held a similar position on busing. But she made a big thing about her biography that she was bused in Oakland. And here's another pessimistic thing to ponder. Half of the last 14 presidents were prepped for the White House with a stint as a Veep. But only one incumbent went directly from being Veep to being elected president. and that was the first one since 1836. So it's not a favored pathway. And they even mentioned the curse of the incumbent vice president. And in the modern era, vice presidents haven't been elected. They've gotten into office through death, as Truman and LBJ, and resignation, as Gerald Ford. And then, okay, sure, a couple of vice presidents had to go into private life, but came back as presidents. And of course, that's Nixon and Biden. But these are the vice presidents that tried and failed right directly out of the vice presidency to become president. And what they all had in common was the president that they were serving just was no asset. For instance, I kind of remember this. He was asked at a press conference to provide an example of one of Nixon's major ideas he had adopted. And he said, "Oh, give me a week." Being young and pro-Kennedy, that was like manna from heaven. We knew about Nixon here in California, and so I stopped Nixon from going directly. Harris is already behind the 8 ball. Biden's borders are, and she's going to be attacked for the border repeatedly. But hold on. Trump is vulnerable, and I'm going to build that case in just a few minutes. But she's going to have to figure out how to negotiate that. And then she's going to be asked about what did she know and when did she know it about Biden's mental acuity. But, when he gets out on the stump, his last hurrah, prepared remarks, reading from a teleprompter, he might be able to come across more dynamically on a victory lap. Everybody will know it's his last hurrah. We'll see. Biden specifically has supported Harris beyond what Barkley and Nixon would have loved to have. This is what he said. My very first decision as the party nominee in 2020 was to pick Harris. And it's been the best decision I've ever made. Why did Biden make that fateful decision? There's some family history that I find fascinating. Kamala had a relationship with his son, Beau, the good son, who was the Attorney General of Delaware when she was Attorney General in California. And they worked closely together and they bonded. And so this is in her role as Attorney General. She's extremely comfortable in that role, and she made friends and set up a contact list. And so she knew Biden from Beau's stories, and Biden knew about her from Beau, and he wouldn't have selected her if she was not capable at some level. So her previous identity is going to come into play more at this moment than we ever saw in 2020. She's got the green light to be the prosecutor and prosecute the the Democrat case. And it seemed like the affection, the personal affection between them is genuine. Note her use of the word earn. It's her intention to earn. And so I'm going to talk about that in just a second as well, because Ezra's got some ideas on that. So hold on. And the Republican Party, as we can see, is dangerous after witnessing the convention. They're talking about mass deportation, police going house to house, knocking on doors, raids. Some of the stuff we did see in the first couple of months in 2017. It was chilling. Illegal immigrants, 11 million of them, were quaking. But here's the deal. There was a bipartisan immigration deal on the table in February 2024. And there's an interesting story behind that bipartisan deal. Two senators did it, but Trump killed it, and he was frank about it. And Ezra feels that this is a liability for them. They're not going to be able to prosecute the Democrats on immigration when they turn their back on a bipartisan deal. And the Republican senator, God bless him, is James Paul Lankford. And Trump pulled the rug out from under him. This deal was a long time coming. This Senator Lankford, he's been working on this immigration deal since 2018. So 6 years he's labored on this. Made headlines 6 years ago. And he took to the floor. He specifically thought that children, migrant reunification was a top priority. Remember how horrific that was as the Trump administration separated families, parents from children. So he addressed that. And he introduced a common sense proposal called the Secure and Succeed Act. And he did his homework. He came up with all the statistics. He pushed. And in February of 2024, what Democrat did he find to compromise with? And that was Kristen Sinema, who was so independent that she's not even running for re-election. So they had it, and Trump nixed it. He came walking in, and there was no secret. The bill was very bad. It was a gift because it was a gift to Democrats. And then he claimed, I don't know who Lankford is. I'd never endorsed him, although he did. It's just one of these transparent lies. Romney was quite explicit. Trump wants it as a campaign issue. And I think Trump himself even said as much. And so, but it wasn't enough to say it's a bad policy. He slammed Lankford and all the work he's been doing for 6 years and went after him personally. And we all know what that's like. And it was pathetic. He had worked out a majority, and in 24 hours, the people who said they'd support him began peeling away. And Sinema took to the floor of the Senate and started calling out all the Republicans who had abandoned. And that was okay with Langford. He was sitting up in the gallery watching his partner go, and he was mad, going after. And so I don't know if he'll come out and say anything on this border deal, but Kamala Harris had a front seat as the person who bangs the gavel in the Senate. She knew what was happening. And she knew that Republicans are saying, we want a border deal. This status quo is terrible, blah, blah. And so Langford and Sinema called their bluff, and that only lasted 24 hours. And Sinema said that they just wanted all talk and no action. So that's one thing on the migrant issue. J.D. Vance, man, he is so anti-immigrant, but he married one. Here he is at his wedding, the Hindu wedding with his father-in-law. Go figure. He said, I don't particularly care about Ukraine, which is what? Giving Putin the green light, that is isolationism on steroids. So he is a snake. The cult of the personality. The Republican Party is all about the Trump family. The Trump family. The only person on the stage is J.D. Vance and his wife. And you wonder how long his wife will last in this. But notice they're not even standing next to the Trumps. Yes, Homer.
Well, I just want to point out that one of the people on the stage at the end of the convention was Paul Manafort, just unbelievably, who would be in jail but for Trump pardoning him. And his connection to Putin is really scary, to the Russian autocracy.
Yes, he goes back to 2004 in Ukraine when Putin tried to poison the candidate with the rice, whatever it was, it caused floor acne, maybe dioxin. I think it was dioxin. And the candidate, you saw his face turn into third-degree acne with a matter of months because he was being poisoned. Imagine that, Putin poisoned. And that J.D. Vance wants to turn Europe over to that guy. So it's become a family cult and enterprise. And that has got to be rubbing some people the wrong way. Not everybody is in the country is MAGA, and this has got to be. And the Democratic, the Republican convention, I think, was an goal. Picking Vance was a mistake. But at least in 2016, Pence was standing next to Trump. But there's no veneer of separation now between the Trump family and power. And so they're not reaching out to swing voters. Democrats have. In Pennsylvania, John Shapiro ran against a MAGA opponent and whipped him. Fetterman ran against the notorious Dr. Oz, and even though he had a stroke, he won. Michigan voted for Whitmer over MAGA. And Wisconsin turned their back on the Republic for governor and voted Tony Evers. Yes,
Well, again, sorry for interrupting, but since you've got Josh Shapiro there, that would be my choice for vice presidential nominee, because we really need the Senate to give up Kelly as senator from Arizona. He needs to be reelected, and if he's named VP, I don't think we'll retain a Democratic senator from Arizona, whereas Shapiro is the governor. So, and additionally, Western Pennsylvania at least is enough of a Midwestern state to appeal to Midwestern voters. So I see a lot of reasons for it to be Shapiro. The downside is only have 18 months of experience as a governor, but on balance, I'm still for him.
Yeah, no, I like Shapiro a lot, and pretty soon we'll get to your other feelings and preferences, and Ezra Klein is a very able messenger on both abortion and the Supreme Court. And ever since the debate, as we said, she's been searing and clear, and her interviews have been strong. And this is from Ezra, a keen observer. And even in the last few weeks, the inside conventional wisdom is Harris is now showing the political skill that she showed when she was a prosecutor in California, and not when she was trying to try out a different identity. And her prosecutor identity these days is just great. Will she wilt under pressure? The last month has been a stress test, and she has won. The courtroom prepared her for moments to prosecute a case, and she's got a strong case to prosecute. And she has got a presence on social media. I guess her dancing makes it on the TikTok on a regular basis, which is not was never true for her, Biden and not Trump. Trump is active on social media, but to his base. The 20 and 30 somethings are not the targets, but they seem to be taking the Kamala. And as we talk policy, that shouldn't count for much, but by God, if it's to get the young people to turn out, okay. She's media savvy. Her mother made this joke about a coconut tree that you don't your success is built on the shoulders of other people. If you're lucky, you just didn't fall out of a coconut tree. It's a little bit like the Elizabeth Warren message. You didn't build it. There's a lot of infrastructure that goes into success, and it's not just a matter of luck. She's a cook. Her recipes circulate on TikTok, and she's connecting because she's being herself now. She's being herself. So Harris on choice. I'm just gonna let you all read this on your own, but she has been very strong delivering the message against the Republicans for depriving the people of choice. Ezra played this clip on his show, and her cadence, her timing was captivating. And I don't think I'm being wishful. And she's going to prosecute Trump for prioritizing billionaires and big corporations when he was president on the tax cut. So a very good spokesman. But guess what? When she was in this fine state as the Attorney General, she wrote a book, Smart on Crime, and Ezra read it. And he was surprised at how good it was, specific on reducing crime, and how clear the message was, and how eloquent it was. It's our family and keeping each other safe. Safety is a fundamental civil right. I think we're going to be hearing that, as opposed to defund the police. And what it's all about, you're helping protect the things that people have worked for. That goes to the blue collar appeal right there. On the other hand, Trump is not safe. He's unsafe. He's a strong man, cozying up the dictators who are making Europe unsafe. And a million Americans died during COVID because the initial response was so bad. He came around when it got the funding, the immunizations, but initially he was just a clown. And he's going to make us unsafe by weakening regulation of water, of air, and even of the financial world with his buddies on Wall Street. He's chaotic. There's nothing safe about that. And so that Ezra's predicting that this is going to be one of her major themes. Okay, so Kamala's willing to be tested. So Ezra's suggesting a middle path, which I find intriguing. For those of us that were looking forward to some drama in an open convention, this is a substitute. And so the major headliners aren't going to participate, but there are a lot of up-and-comers in the Democratic Party who are be more than willing to get on a stage at a town hall with Kamala to make their case against Donald Trump. That would be the goal of the evening, not necessarily to go after each other, but there could be some ambiguity in this situation where you never know what kind of questions the moderators going to ask. So you get Harris along with other young Democrats to put on an exhibition. The other thing, these town halls could be, what's the incentive for a big name person to accept one or two? Well, it's going to be a job interview for vice president. How well, if you want to be vice president, how well would you handle these town halls with a national focus? You all are where you are because of your statewide influence and political talent. But when the question is national, how are you going to do? How are you going to come across? Voters would be somewhat satisfied because they see her in the process of winning a nomination, not just being handed it And it'd be good for her to sharpen her message, handle the difficult questions the moderator comes up with. And let's see if she's up to it. So a middle path, not quite an open convention, but certainly more entertainment and information than the Republicans supply. Ezra thinks that the Republicans are made a real mistake. The Vance pick in particular, the over-the-top convention, the WrestleMania. Good, MAGA loved that. Just like the Apprentice. But how about the rest of America? WrestleMania, really? They act like they've won this election, but they haven't. Fareed weighs in and says this is a chance for a party makeover. The extreme ideological elements in identity politics, particularly as expressed by the edge of the spectrum on X, that needs to be put in its place. In particular, identity politics, the campus culture, transgender rights, that needs to be moved back towards the mainstream, if not all the way, at least edge back from the extremes and from the true believers. And one critic says Democrats espouse too many luxury beliefs, things that make educated elites feel good. But we've got to be focused on the working class. Democrats used to be the party of the working class. And Trump, by inviting union to speak at the Republican convention, is making a move. He already has. And maybe we need a Sister Soldier moment. This was when this African-American radical spoke out during the Clinton administration, and Clinton put her in her place, speaking as the president of the United States. And Kamala is the perfect bearer of putting some of these people in their place back and edge them away from their extreme viewpoints that are turning off middle-class Americans whose vote the Democrats desperately in need. So a broader reset in the next few weeks, that would yield a Democratic Party that would appeal to Americans, more Americans for decades, get back to what we were. The final slide is the slide I had in my presentation about an open convention and superdelegates. Superdelegates are not isolated elites. Superdelegates are a form of representative democracy. They're not as representative of the whole country as 435 House representatives. But if you put together all those congressmen and labor union members and county chairmen and mayors of small towns and county commissioners, people who've volunteered for the party or done fundraising, done some of the things that Eichel and Carroll and others are doing for the Democratic get out the vote. you guys should be super delegates, and that's the point of my final slide. So I'm going to stop sharing and open it up. Homer suggested we spend a big part of the time talking about our preferences, but it doesn't sound like that's on offer. It sounds like we've got to take Kamala. I think I've laid out Ezra's point of view. He was one of the first ones to come on board with a open convention possibility. But yeah, Michael, so why don't you start us off?
Well, one of my observations, at least yesterday, when I was seeing some of, I didn't hear the whole press conference, I guess she had, but Kamala smiles, and I think it's very noteworthy that everything I've seen so far, she is smiling. She looks happy. And every time I see Trump and Vance, they're always they look very dour. They look very, like Trump is snarling. He's always pissed off about something. Now, so there is the image. I mean, she is portraying joy, happiness. She's glad to be running, that kind of thing. And she's not calling people a bunch of names. But the other thing that worries me is right away the Republicans, Mike Johnson, they're threatening lawsuits and all this other kind of nonsense. And I said, it's like the Republicans cannot deal with a candidate that they're afraid of, except to say we're going to try to throw all kinds of roadblocks. I mean, if the first thing I think they should have said is we want to have a debate between Harris and Trump. It's like we want our man out there right in the, put her up against him right away. And instead, all they can do is think to throw these kind of stupid legal roadblocks in. And it just dismays me that this is the party supposedly of Lincoln and so on. They have become, I don't know, they are not representative of American democracy anymore.
You got that right. Okay.
I thought I've read that Trump has said he will debate Kamala.
Oh, I can't wait.
Yeah.
She'd tear him to shreds.
Yeah, maybe I agree with you. I look forward to that debate. I was delighted to read it.
Yeah,
One more thing about Kamala and fundraising, this, what is it, $80 to $100 million she's raised. A very large proportion of the donors, small donors, are new. They've never donated before.
Yeah.
She's bringing in new people. And the other thing, as for her appeal, when you mentioned her dancing and so forth, is I'm so out of touch with pop culture these days. I still don't quite know what it means, but a pop singer has declared her a brat. And that's a really good thing for people who are young, to be called a brat by the singer. She apparently, and Beyonce has said you can use her song, that Kamala can use her song at her rallies. So this could really mobilize the youth vote, which we've been worried about with Joe Biden. It could I'm actually feeling momentum from listening to all this.
Yeah.
I would agree as well. Yeah.
Well, I think it's her election to lose at this point. I mean,
that's going a little far.
Well, no, but I mean, she can't make any missteps. I mean, the most insignificant little comment or something, the Republicans are going to jump all over her if she says even the slightest gaffe. I mean, they're just looking for something, and I'm sure right now they're trolling through everything she's ever said and written to try to find something to use against her. So,
and as a prosecutor, she will have made controversial decisions. Some of the cases will have gone awry. They'll find something. I thought you meant it's hers to lose, meaning she's sure to win unless she makes a bad misstep. Then they'll go after her for sure. But she seems resilient.
Well, she's she's got to get a good crew, good people around her, and it isn't just money. I mean, there is, winning hearts and minds by having some sort of appeal. I think they said the youth vote, she's definitely going to capture more young people because of her age. So
Well, I have to agree because of my age, that was one of the, with Biden running, I was just not ready to kind of bet the store for him just because of the fact that I know what I would be like at this age and stage, saying, why would you want to get up in the morning and have to face those kinds of decisions? So yes, fun to see the torch being handed down a couple, or at least a generation anyway.
Yeah.
So got this idea I've been wondering about for a few days, where Biden would actually resign the presidency and she would become elevated now to the actual president instead of candidate for president. And I wondered, would that be a powerful thing to do, or just confusing, or what?
Rudy, I had the same idea. I thought that would put her in the role of president. She'd be the incumbent, right? And Biden would have to just admit, you're right. I've looked at things. I'm not fit to run, so I shouldn't be right now. You're right, Republicans. I'm stepping aside.
I don't think Joe will do that.
No,
and I
and
see
he
it as
said
a little dangerous to do, actually.
he said he's going to serve out his term. I
Yeah.
mean, it's not like, he's already changed about running for president, and after now announcing he plans to serve out his term, for him to say, I'm also resigning, that's too many sort of strikes against you. I mean, then the Republicans would say he shouldn't have been president in the first place, that kind of stuff.
Agreed. Plus that Kamala doesn't have any chance to really kind of get out and expand her base, because all of a sudden I think that
She should be campaigning. I agree.
thank you.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing that I will tell you, I'm a worrier, but that worries me, because I lived in Chicago in 1966 when the Democratic Convention was held there. And if any of you remember,
1968.
or 68, I'm sorry, 68.
Yeah, so.
I would not put it past the Republicans to try to do as much as they can to cause disruption, but make it seem as though it's the Democrats or some, like they would come there and foment all kinds of trouble and embarrass the Democrats somehow in that convention. So it's August 19th through the 22nd, and I'm sure they're plotting something to.
It's a really good point. I bet it's going to be over the Gaza situation. That's just needs a little kerosene poured on that, and you can get
Right.
riled up.
Right.
I hadn't thought of that. That's a scary idea.
Yeah, I mean, I've said, thank God Mayor Daley is no longer around, because he told the cops, go after those demonstrators, and it was later classified as a police riot. If any of you remember that, they beat the crap out of people. I was in medical school then, and they were asking medical students to go down to the convention and serve as like first aid and so on. And I just had a bad feeling about it. I said, it doesn't look good, and I might have had my skull cracked if I'd gone down there. So and that's the one thing the Republicans, it's like same thing with January 6th. They may come there in force and try to create a riot and disgrace the Democrats.
Something to worry about.
Well, I'm sure they've got that city so locked down now. In fact, there's this group of people who meet the pub, and one of our members, Joanne, is going to Chicago and will be there, but leaving like 2 days before the convention starts. If she's able to get out of the city, they may have the airport so tightly secured that you'll have to have 6 pieces of ID to get out of Chicago
or get into Chicago.
or get in.
Yeah, close the borders coming in.
Right. Well, anyway, very interesting.
Now, you live in interesting times. So, well, we'll see what the next week brings. Oh my God.
Oh, what's his name? Menendez, the senator. Did you just see that? He resigned.
Oh, did he?
Yeah.
There's a contrast. So a Democrat senator is convicted of a crime, and the party requires that he resign.
Mhm.
Trump is convicted of a crime, and the Republicans nominate him for president.
Right. Right. I mean, I don't know. Will Rogers used to say, folks, I can't make this stuff up.
The
Actually,
Secret
that was
Service
Dave Barry.
chair resigned as well.
Will Rogers only knew what he read in the newspapers.
Right. Well, last night at the pub, we were agonizing over, if Rudy can talk about this, why do people support this man? We cannot figure it out. I mean,
I heard one theory that it's because he pisses off the left wing and the intellectuals, and they're just angry and they love pissing other people off.
well, what I've said is that there a lot of people from these red states have felt disrespected. They have felt looked down on. They have felt as though they weren't important. And Thomas Friedman wrote a column about this, where when you disrespect people, when you feel they're worse off, and so on, and then Trump comes along and he says, "I'm your retribution. I'm your revenge." That's part of his appeal. I mean, people can't stand so many of the things he stands for, but here's a millionaire living in a gilded mansion, and he says, "I'm one of you."
We're in the
So,
process of reading a book. It's by Doris Kearns Goodwin, and it was Dick Goodwin's kind of a semi-memoir about him. And Dick Goodwin was the speechwriter for JFK on his election. And what was really impressive about that, and the whole lead up to that, is being able to mobilize the young people. And Kennedy was actually, that's how that all happened. And certainly that was the kind of the founding of the Peace Corps, of which I took part of my life, and it was great. And just basically asking the kids, the young people, to pick up the torch and go forward. And so I certainly hope that Kamala is going to be able to do that.
yeah. Well, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yes.
So,
Well, the country's been begging for someone younger than 2 old guys, and you got them.
Yeah. John, you mentioned the Ezra Klein piece. Have people seen his podcast? It's brilliant.
Yeah, it's brilliant stuff.
Really, he's eloquent the way he talks about, the divide, the way he talks about the people in the Republicans just sort of being angry and wanting something to rail against. And he's really very hopeful about Kamala. So I hope he's right.
yeah.
You
He had-
mentioned David, I referenced him a lot.
I bet. I'm sorry I missed the first part. Yeah.
Yeah. Did did you hear it, or did watch, or how did John, you mentioned he had an article today? Ezra
Yes.
Klein?
New York Times.
It's a monologue. I think it starts as a podcast monologue, but you can get a transcript of all his programs. So today was 25 minutes of monologue where he expanded on what he said 5 days ago. Now, 5 days ago, his sister interviewed him. So it was actually a dialogue, but it was his producer. And that's, and Homer and I talked a little bit about that. All of a sudden, he wasn't talking about an open convention, which is what he's been his hobby horse for since February. And it took a while for me to lower my expectations and excitement over an open convention. I came up with a history of open convention. I'll still give it when things settle down.
By the way, I don't know if you noticed that there was and Kamala's one of her speeches yesterday, and I can't remember if it was exactly where it was, but there was a clip on it, and there's a young woman that's standing right next to her, and I don't know if you noticed on her lapel that she had the Stanford tree on it. So, did anybody happen to pick that up?
No.
She does not need a Stanford endorsement for the middle class.
Yeah.
She's
So-
a Howard graduate, isn't she, Kamala?
Oh, probably originally. Yeah.
I think so.
Why is she wearing Stanford?
No, it's the
Oh,
person
no,
next
this
to
is a young woman that was next to her.
Oh, next to her.
Yeah. It
Well,
was,
this thing the critic had said, the Democrats feel that they have the luxury of expressing academic values. Oh, something like Latinx. Oh my God, what a misguided piece of junk that was. It did not endear anybody to Democrats. In fact, Latinos were turned off.
Yes, they were.
Well, the Democratic Party's got a lot to learn, and let's hope that Kamala will be a good tutor.
So is there anybody besides Kamala that anybody else thinks is a better candidate?
Oh yeah.
Ooh.
I like the idea of a Whitmer Booker ticket. And I would have loved an open convention so we could see her earn it, but that's passed. So maybe it's for the best because of the long month of waiting really did restrict the options for the party. And what's happening seems to be okay. I like Ezra Klein concludes, she's good enough. And she seems to be pulling energy into the party. So she wouldn't have been my own first choice, no.
And Ezra says that too. He says, look, if we had an open process, who knows who I would have picked. But we don't, and here we are, and
let's do it.
so we'll see.
Thank you, John.
All right.
Okay.
Thanks a lot.
I'm signing off.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye, John.
Bye.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.